Well, hello everybody. Hello. Well, thanks for attending our weekly live demo with me. Hopefully, Mark will come and join me. He's a little bit of my sidekick, so I'd like to have him here. Hold on, I think he sent me a message telling me that maybe he is. Oh, he's coming back as a host. All right, let's wait for Mark. Okay. All right. So I have my APIANT shirt on. I have my APIANT cup. And here's Mark coming in as me. So this is really strange. Buddy.
That's not Mark. That's me.
Oh, that's you, Ben.
Hold on.
That's Ben impersonating me. You do a good impersonation of me.
Thanks. Practice makes perfect.
Just like me. It's really strange.
I'll fix it.
How you guys doing?
We're good in the hood.
Yeah. Did you see the opening screen for today?
Yeah. I loved it.
So I tried to do a theme, for each one, and based on what's happening here in Philadelphia area, this is what today's theme feels like. I'll show it to you again. Here it is. This is today's opening screen. It's exactly what it's like outside. So there you go.
I'm sorry. We won't talk about.
It's nice. Once in a while, not every day.
Yeah.
No, but it's nice. So, how was your holiday?
Great. How was yours?
That was awesome. Mark got a new hot tub, so I know.
Yeah, it's nice.
You used it today?
I used it last night. I haven't used it yet today, but maybe after this one.
Good. All right. So I'll tell you what we're going to cover today. So you saw that I have linked accounts and storage scopes.
Yeah.
So for today, what I want to use is, or what I want to cover is going to be a little more technical. So if you're watching this or you're attending this and you're not necessarily on the technical side of things, you're more on the marketing side of things, or I would say you'll probably be really bored with this particular one because we're gonna go pretty technical. But at least the first part of the presentation, which is again completely impromptu, may be good for you, so you can understand what the capabilities of the platform are and why we want to cover these topics: linked accounts and storage scope. So at least for the next 10 minutes, you probably can stay. But then after that, you'll probably get bored when we get into the specifics of them. Everything looking good, Mark, on the live stream, or did I not do this right? Oh yeah, it's working. Everything's good. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the chat. So yeah,
it's working. It's good. So all right, let me kind of describe why I want to cover this, because this is really kind of cool. Well, it's actually really, really cool. And Penn, this is really you're like my audience for the first part here. So let me share my screen here, and I just want to talk about one of our apps here, which is Zoom Connect. Okay, there's a lot that differentiates APIANT with other integration platforms, and we feel on definitely with our tech. But one of the things that really sets us apart is the ability to cater to enterprise in a multi-user fashion, but also the ability to cater to franchises when it comes to doing API integration, or when it comes to offering a solution that uses API. So what I mean by that, so this is one of the apps that we built with our platform called Zoom Connect, and it does a lot of things, right? So it's fully automated. It does it sends customized emails. It keeps track of links and all of that. And we're not going to cover any of this. It's customizable. We're not going to cover any of this. What I want to cover is this here. Scale with multi-locations. This is not just something we say. This is really because our platform pen allows us to do this. So what do I mean by that? There are two really essential pieces to doing API integration when it comes to multi-locations. One is to be able to share data between these locations. And what I mean by that is if each location is connected to a different mind body, for instance, right? You want a central account to be able to receive and send data to all different locations. So that's the case for Zoom Connect, but it's also the case for Shopify Connect. So here it is right here. So you'll notice that our Shopify Connect between MindBody and Shopify has something very similar, which is the ability to connect all these MindBody locations to one Shopify account, right? So the first part is being able to share data, okay? So sales, inventory, book clients, and all that. But that's only half the battle. The other piece is when you go many to one, right? So many MindBody sites to one account, one master account that may have multiple sub accounts, but still just one connection, okay? You have to deal with what we call rate limits and the developers who are on this call or who are watching this know exactly what I'm talking about. Rate limits is really not something most folks have to worry about who are doing just one connection for one location and so forth. Rate limits becomes really essential to keep track of and curate and queue when it comes to connecting, for instance, 50 MindBody locations to one Zoom account, one Zoom master account, or, and what do I mean by that? Well, let me just go to the Zoom rate limit here. Now, most APIs have rate limits, okay? I'm just gonna cover Zoom right now, but Shopify has rate limits, MindBody has rate limits. I mean, most APIs have rate limits. They have to, because they have to protect themselves from, massive usage or even abuse, right? So, for instance, here, the rate limit for Zoom, I believe is 10 requests per second. Heavy rate limits apply to reports, dashboard, get meeting details, right? So, and then send chat live, get a user, list, right? So I think 30 requests per second, 30 requests per second. So you can see here, 30 requests per second. How is that important to us, right? Why is that even an issue? Well, I'll tell you why it's an issue. Because if you just connect MindBody to Zoom, right? And anytime we have a new booking, we add somebody, register somebody for the Zoom meeting in Zoom. If you get 10 people per second max, then it's fine. Again, I don't want to necessarily say this because you could be doing a lot with the API more than just registering people. But if you generate less than 10 API calls per second, then you're fine. But if you're doing like an export or something, or if you're doing, and let's say you have 100, 200, 300 locations that you're connecting to this one Zoom account, right? To this one Zoom admin account, you could very easily, go over that 10 per second, okay? So how do we handle it, right? How do we make sure that you don't have 100 locations that are all through our integration making an API call at the same time, and it always breaks because Zoom is going to come back and say, hey, you've exceeded the rate limit. So that's what I want to cover. So again, why this is important is because when we say that we can scale with multi-locations, not only can we connect these locations and link them together and share data and report on the data, but also we're very cognizant and we've engineered the solution to make sure that we work within the parameters of the API rate limits. How much sense did I make with that, Pen, for you?
Sorry, muted. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay, so this is a pretty big deal when you really want to use APIANT, as a solution to support many users and many locations and so forth. Again, this is a much more, I'm going to use Zoom to MindBody as an example, but this is really much more than just Zoom to MindBody. It's any multi connections to different credentials that update the same API. Okay. All right. So that's what I want to cover today. And that's really more of the marketing side or the business side of things. But now we're going to get into the much more, technical side of this. You ready, Mark?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. All right, so let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to keep just this open here and this open. I'm going to close the rest. I'm going to close Zoom here so we can just put this in context. So when I say here, you can see that this particular solution, which is what I have open here, this particular solution connect multiple Zoom accounts, connect as many Zoom accounts as you need to conduct classes simultaneously, link multiple MindBody site IDs, right? One instructor can now teach a Zoom class to all clients who booked on LinkedIn on a linked MindBody site. So what I'm going to show you here is if you had, let's say, 50 different MindBody site ID, 50 different physical locations that connected to the integration, and they all publish the same class that is going to go to one Zoom account. Okay, so Mark Floyd, ladies and gentlemen, the superstar, yoga teacher, world renowned. Well, actually, yoga teacher is I'm going to choose something else. So Mark Floyd, the break dance teacher, that is world renowned, is going to teach a class, on January 31st, and every one of these site IDs is going to publish that class, right? And every one of these different locations all over the world are now taking in, registrations so everybody can attend this one class here in Zoom, okay? Believe it or not, this actually happens. We do have customers that we work with that do more than 1,000 attendees per Zoom meeting, right? So it's not it's not unseen that you would do teach a class to 1,000 people right in a Zoom meeting. Zoom can really handle it. So how does this work? Well, first let's talk about linked accounts. So this is really the part that matters to you if you're a franchise or if you're one of our customers that licenses a dedicated platform. Let me just cover this real quick. What's a dedicated platform? Well, in APIANT, there's really two essential ways to use our product. Cloud, which is you go to apiant.com and you create an account with us and we create it for you. So franchises can still do cloud, it's fine. But dedicated is APIANT in a box, so to speak. So you have APIANT and then you install it in your own AWS or through Docker in your own ecosystem. And you can basically build your own integrations with your own users, and it's completely isolated, completely different, different server, different IP, everything. Okay. So what I'm talking about here is for both when you either have, a franchise on cloud, or you have a dedicated and you want to host your own client. Okay. So when you have a dedicated, or when you are linking accounts, you can actually link these accounts. So here I'm in development, but you can see here when I come here, I can actually switch between my linked accounts. That's not all the accounts that are on the box, that are on the server. These are just the accounts that have been identified as being linked with this account here, right? Since I'm logged in as admin, I could switch to any of these accounts that are on the server. But right now, the only accounts that are linked to this one, okay, are when I do switch. So if you are a franchise corporate and you log in our platform and we've integrated something for you and all of your locations are linked, you're going to be able to see them when you go to linked here. And here you can see then when I do a switch here, you can see that there's a link here next to these accounts. Okay. So what happens when I switch to a linked account? So let me just go to template 2, I believe. Yeah, let me just do this one. It's called template just because it's just the name of the account. So it could have been called Mark and Fred. Okay. So let me go to the install of Zoom Connect here. Okay. Zoom Connect site. Here it is. All right. Let's take a look at this. So here's Zoom Connect on the master account. Let me just do a refresh here. All right. So here's Zoom Connect on the master account, and here's Zoom Connect on the linked account. Now, why does the linked have a link next to it and the master doesn't? This is because we've deployed all of these automations to this account here. Now, one of the things I haven't talked about, which is there's many more benefits to this than just doing, franchises. We actually use it for our own sake, meaning this particular solution here, MindBody to Zoom Connect, is used by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of customers. Whenever we do an upgrade, we're able to deploy upgrades to all of the accounts that are linked, that are using it. Sorry, not that are linked, but that are using it. Now the accounts are not linked, but the automations are linked. So if I wanted to deploy this automation here, right, to linked accounts, these are the accounts that are using this automation. And if I said deploy all, it's going to update that automation for all these accounts that are using this particular automation. How do I know it's linked? Is because that automation here has a link here next to it. Okay, Mark?
Yep.
Okay. Now that's different than having a linked account, right? So if I go to APIANT first, no, actually I don't want to do this because I don't want to show actual customer data. So, but if I went to Zoom Connect on our production account and I said deploy, you could see that when I said deploy to linked accounts, it would deploy to hundreds and hundreds of accounts. Okay. So that's important for admins of the platform who want to be able to build solutions, deploy them to all of these customers, and then make a change to the automation and then deploy the update to all of these customers. Now, remember, because APIANT allows you to store settings aside from logic, you can do that safely, even though everybody's using it slightly differently. And this is where you would store your settings. This is how you could store and view your settings that would be separate. Okay. So does that make sense here, what I'm saying? And I really, if you could, Mark, I just want to make sure that it doesn't make sense to you because you already knew this, but what I'm saying makes sense.
No, it does make sense because you have the ability to, create a master, template of automation that you edit and that you configure and get it ready for new versions or enhancements. And then it gives you the ability to deploy those to all of your accounts that are going to use that need that update or change without affecting their existing settings. That way their little customizations based on their settings are pertaining to their account, and you don't have to do each one manually, right? You don't have to go and do it all manually.
So it's really scalable because you can deploy to all.
Right.
But again, the difference here, there's a nuance in what I'm saying here, is linked accounts or linked automations are not linked accounts. They are two completely different things. I can link an automation to an account that is not linked, right? And then I can link an account. So how do I know this? Well, here, this account is only linked to these 3 accounts.
Right.
This automation here, it happens to be the same ones, but they could be more. I could have deployed this to all accounts, right? If I deploy this to all of the accounts that are on the box, then I could have done that. But so that's the difference. And really the difference is that linked accounts is really for usually the same organization or a developer that want to link all his customers, okay? And linked automations is potentially all different organizations. And as admin of the platform, you want to deploy those templates or those automations to all these accounts. Okay, so I think I think the horse is dead.
Right.
We need a little that we can hear when I've beaten that horse. Okay, so how did we configure this? How did we say, hey, look, how did we say here? Let's go back to the screen here. How did we say one Zoom account, multiple Mindbody? How do you handle this API overage, right? Well, take a look at this. This is the master account. So let's just call this the corporate account. If I see the connections to the corporate account, so this is our development account. So you have a lot of apps connected. But if you look for Zoom, you'll see that Zoom is connected. So this Zoom is connected to this account. If I go to a linked account, right? So potentially a franchisee or another Mindbody site that's linked to it, you'll notice, I don't think it is, yeah, you'll notice that Zoom is not connected. Okay. Yet both are making full use of this app. So both are able to register people to Zoom. So how is that happening? How are we moving one registration from one account to the next? The reason we did this is because of that API overage, right? We can only have one connection to Zoom make API calls, because then we can queue those API calls. So if there's 100 registrations, we just queue them, and then it works its way through all the registration with that one connection from the master. So this is why the way we've configured this, here you can see that you have Zoom Connect version 1 master and site. So this has master and site, but this one only has site, does not have master. So what is the difference between the Zoom Connect site folder of automation and the Zoom Connect master? Well, let's take a look. I'm sure you can guess what the difference is. Based on what I said on the connection, what would you say the fundamental difference is between automations that are in the Zoom master folder versus the Zoom site, Mark?
The master is the one that's processing the communication to Zoom.
Exactly. Man, you're good. But you already know the answer to that. Just act like you don't know the answer and you're searching for it, and then give it to us. I think it'll be more impressive. Yeah, do it again as if you didn't know and then you came up with the solution. Okay, so Mark, what is the difference between a Zoom master folder and a Zoom site folder in your opinion, based on, in the context of what I've described earlier?
Well, what I'm thinking is that the master is the one that's controlling.
Okay, you're a terrible actor. Terrible.
And I need my understudy, Ben.
Terrible actor. I think Penn would have done a better job. Okay, so you're 100% right. So let's take a look at one, right? Based on what you said, register client in Zoom meeting. Okay, so I'm going to see this, and it's called admin, by the way. Oh, and by the way, the reason it's called admin, so anything with the word admin, you have the ability to lock it so your users can't turn it on. So if I'm a user here and I try to turn this on and it says admin, I'm not going to be able to turn it on. And if you've locked the ability to make changes as well, they won't be able to rename it, so they can't turn it on. This is really for their own protection. So when it comes to this, we don't want our users to turn things on, change things, because this is a solution. This is a full-fledged turnkey solution. This is not just a custom integration that they can change themselves, right? If it was a custom integration, we would let them change it if they want to. But in this case, it's not. So this is why you have the word admin in there. And this is something on all the platform. Whenever this starts with the word admin, only the admin can change or turn on the automation. All right, so register client in Zoom meeting. Let's take a look, and you'll see very straightforward. NoUp Trigger. Okay, so a NoUp Trigger means it can only be called, right? You can only call this automation. The automation is not going to trigger itself. Now, I could turn it on and it would run itself and it would always execute because there's no operation in a trigger, right? It's not like it's going to search for something new and come back and say, oh, is there any new registration? NoUp means either you leave it dormant with always off, so you can see this one is always off in the admin, and then you call it from another automation, or whenever it runs every 15 minutes, it will always execute. Okay, there's no filter here, it's just NoUp. NoUp basically says nothing. You can also lock groups of actions, especially when we build those, we lock it just so we don't confuse the client. If they log in, they don't mess with it, they don't know what's in there. Okay, so in this case, let's take a look at what it does. Okay, so it does a few things. One of the things it does is it adds the meeting registrant in Zoom. Okay, and then it stores and then we'll talk about storage and scope and so forth, right? So it adds the meeting registrant in Zoom here. And at the very end, here, this is, if you're, again, an admin of the platform, we adjust the task billing unit. In this case, we charge our customers that are using this per booking. So when a booking is successful and we've added that booking to Zoom, we just increment by 1, or we deduct by 1 if it's a cancellation, okay? But you can see here that the one API call that we make is add meeting registrant to Zoom. And it's only one automation that does that, register client in Zoom. If I go to the linked account, the linked account doesn't have register client in Zoom, right? The linked account only has create or update Zoom meeting, new booking. So let's take a look at new booking. What does new booking mean? It means somebody booked themselves in that mind body and they said, yeah, I want to attend this class. So this needs to trigger this, right? But
Yes.
they're separate accounts, they're linked accounts. So how does it do that? Let's take a look. So let's look at the trigger here. Now the trigger for this is different. The trigger, it's not a NoUp. In this case, the trigger is going to be a new booking in Mindbody. And again, anytime you see instant, it means it's a webhook. So it's instantaneous. As soon as somebody books in Mindbody, this kicks in, okay? And then when they book in Mindbody, it comes down here, and it does a lot of things. I'm gonna stretch this a little bit. But let's look for the part when it's gonna say, okay, execute this register, send this to the master so the master can book the class, book the client in Zoom. And you have, again, right now I'm showing you just one site that's linked, but you could have 50 of those doing this at the same time. And then the master will just work its way through each one of these one at a time, okay? In order to not exceed the API overage. So let's take a look here, register client. Okay, so here, nothing, right here. You see this? Whenever you see the little cog wheel or whatever, the gears with APIANT, that's an APIANT action. So this APIANT action says register client in Zoom meeting, but that's not a Zoom API call. That's an API call to send the data to that automation. So that automation is called admin register client in Zoom meeting version 4.01. Okay, so let's see what this says. Here it is. So admin register client in Zoom meetings. So you can actually type right here the name of the automation, and we keep track of our versions. So here we say it's version whatever is in the integration setting. Okay, the integration setting will tell you what the version is. So the integration setting here, then we'll talk about scope and storing next. But if I wanted to know which version this one has, I can just come here to Zoom Connect settings. And I think it is the same version, or is it an older version? So you can compartmentalize general settings, and this is version 4.01. Okay, so it's going to take this from the settings, and it's going to add it at the end of this automation name. This is how we make sure that only the right version calls the proper version. Okay, and then here we actually send a query string. Okay, and you can call this whatever you want, but here we're sending reg ID, registration ID, and the registration ID is comprised of a site ID with a tilde and then a booking ID from MindBody. Okay, so when we execute this action, it's going to come here and it's going to launch this. And then the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to get the version number, and then we're going to read the query from the parameter reg ID. So this is reading what we've sent. We're reading reg ID. Okay. So now we've got a specific ID for the site and the booking ID for that site, which we've basically serialized in some sort, or at least made unique, right, by combining the two. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So again, you could have 50 automations that are called 3 new bookings version 4.01 on 50 different MindBody site IDs in this case, right? All sending registration to the mothership, so to speak. Okay. And this is the mothership automation for registration, admin, register client. And it will work its way through. And we're not going to cover everything that it does because that's just a different class or a different, demo, but it's going to work its way through. Okay. And then so in this case, it gets the reg ID, it stores the reg ID, it figures out if it's a client, a staff, or just a shareable link. It stores class name, staff name, and everything else. But then at some point, it goes to Zoom and it adds the meeting registrant with all this information that we were able to gather. Okay, so that's how we're able to handle the, in this particular case, the issue of having API rate limits. You have multiple linked accounts that are sending data to the mothership, and the mothership is the only one connected to Zoom, and it just does one at a time. Pen, how much sense does that make to you?
I am kind of following.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just a beginner, so to be fair.
And I don't expect you to fully understand it, but
just for everybody else listening, that's why I'm kind of
right. Okay.
Kind of following.
Okay. So right. The analogy would be the analogy would be this. This right here is the person behind the soup kitchen, or let's just do something like that. We're in the military, okay? This person is the guy in charge of putting food on the plates for all the soldiers. All the soldiers need food, but if you let all the soldiers help themselves, right, it's going to be a mess. So this person here puts a ration of food on each plate of each soldier as they walk through the line. Basically, that's what it does, one at a time. So this goes to Zoom and it registers one person at a time. That's really what the analogy is. Or this is the booking agent. All these people are customers and they say, hey, I need to fly to Aruba. It does one at a time. That's basically all it does. That's the model here. All right. So that's how we handle it. So you can imagine that this would be really, really useful in all kinds of scenarios. It could be useful for scenarios where you have API rate limits. It could be useful where you have scenarios where you have credentials you don't want to share with all of the other, other sites, right? So only one holder has those credentials to this app. So it could be really useful in accounting, for instance, where you could do payroll, or you could do, journal entries, where only one site, one connected account does the transactions that are authorized, and all the other ones kind of report back, right? There's a lot of scenarios where this could be very, very useful. As far as I know, at least some of the other integration platforms, we are, from what I understand, the only ones, and I may be wrong, and if any competitors is on the demo now, let us know. But we are the only ones who can have automations execute automations in other account, because this is really what this is doing, right? This automation here, this automation book client is able to execute an automation in one of the linked accounts, and this is exactly what this is doing here. So, when you talk about building networks and stuff, it's really, really exciting to know that an automation can execute another automation and send data as well. Okay. Since I talked about that, there's also the other scenario. The scenario where you would want the master account to execute automations in all the linked accounts. So that's a different scenario. Right, Mark?
Yes.
So instead of many to one, it's one to many. Okay. So if I recall, the one that does that, maybe this one. Right here. So what does this do? So this is the other way around. I know you're flipping the page. You're flipping the scenario. Instead of mind body reporting to Zoom, and then we do all the Zoom one at a time, now we receive something from Zoom and we need to send it to all of the linked accounts. So this is when there's a new recording completed, right? A recording was just completed to all of these, to a Zoom meeting. And you want to be able to send that Zoom recording to anybody who's registered, who attended. But the people who've attended could potentially be in all those linked accounts. They're not just in this account, right? So how do you do that? Well, it's the other way around. So here, you look at this, execute automation 9, email Zoom recording links to clients, right? 4-pointer in owner account. So let's take a look. Right here. So admin 9, I believe 9 is going to be here. 7, right here. So you see this automation here, email Zoom recording links. Again, I'm in the linked account. I'm in template 2. So I could have 50 of those having that, right? Let's take a look at what it has. This one, again, has a NoUp. Remember what NoUp is, means it's going to, every time I execute it, it's going to execute the actions, okay? But this one is keep off. So it doesn't run on its own. We keep it off. And the reason we keep it off is because we only trigger it, right, from the outside. So now you have 50 of these. So these are, all of the MindBody sites. Each one has an automation called automation 9, email Zoom recording links to clients, okay? And what does it do? Well, once it's executed, it receives query parameter class identifier. Now, I'm not going to describe what a class identifier, but it's basically something that makes that class unique for that site. Okay, we're not going to get into how this is built, but it's just now that automation knows, oh, he's talking about this class, right? So what does the master do? The master here with this automation, so it does a bunch of things here. It says, what is the version number? Is there a MindBody class ID for this? Yes. And then it says, okay, let's execute automation 9 to all the linked accounts. So if I had 50 linked accounts, this would trigger 50 automations basically, right? It triggers it, and then it sends the class identifier, okay, which is a combination of the class ID and of the class ID here in this case. It also sends the MindBody site ID. Okay, so it sends this, and now these 50 accounts are receiving it from the main account. They're receiving, hey, we have a new Zoom link. Let's get to let's do some time zone change or adjustment and so forth. Let's go find out how many clients in MindBody attended that class on Zoom. Okay, and let's loop through each one of them right here, and then let's send them the recording, send email client with a recording link. So this will send them the HTML email with the recording link, okay, with all this information. Okay, so this is the other way around, from one to many, from the master to many clients, as opposed to from many clients to one master. Does that make sense? I'm sure this one makes more sense, right?
Yes.
Okay. Good. So this is cool. This really allows us to have all of these linked accounts, you know, fully integrated with the master account, going back and forth, doing all kinds of really cool things between these apps. Okay. All right. So that's execution. There's a bunch of other automations or actions that allow you to execute things on other accounts. But I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to move on to scopes and storage, okay? Because if you understand what I've just described, you can extrapolate that to so much more, and we can do so much more. But you just need to understand the basic. The basic is that you have linked accounts, and they can call each other's automations from one to many, or from many to one.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Let's talk about scopes. So I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we covered storage. Do you remember that, Mark?
Yes.
Right. So in layman's term, how would you describe storage?
Well, we can store based off of the local account or the individual's account. We can store based on the data that's being processed just by that automation. So it's kind of like a temporary storage of information. And we can store that information into the entire scope of that account.
Okay, good. So if I wanted to know in this account, no, what you said is actually correct. If I wanted to know what's being stored in this account, I can actually right click here, and I can choose manage account data. This is all the data that is stored right on this account in the account scope. Okay, the account scope means it's available only to this account across automations, but only to this account. Okay, so here you can see you can store all kinds of stuff, and you can search on a lot of this, right? So if I wanted to, search for, I don't know, what do we store? Right, how many times do we store this number here in the val? And you have a key group, key, value name, value, and then you can search a date range. Okay, so or a specific date. So here, if I wanted to know, how many times do we store this? Just once. So Zoom connect account, Zoom account mappings. This is the ID, the account, and then the email for that account, the value, name, and the value for this account. Okay, so it's really powerful. And by the way, when you have the platform, so this is, if you highlight anything in yellow, then what I'm saying, when you're an admin here, this is really, really cool. You can fetch and query any of the data that is stored on any of the accounts. Okay, now this is really cool because I'll just give you one scenario. Let's say you had 50 accounts, all making sales in, let's say, MindBody, and you wanted all these sales to report back to one Shopify account on the master account. So a little bit like Zoom Connect, but that's Shopify Connect, right? Okay. And let's say you wanted to build a dashboard that you want to know out of all these MindBody sites out there, right? What are their sales per day? You can now query all this data from the master account. The master account can write automations that updates the dashboard that says, for all the linked accounts, show me their sales for the day, and then store it. Or add it to a dashboard app like Domo or whatever you want, right? So this is really, really powerful because now your network communicates fully, right? All right, so let's look at an action that stores data, and let's look at an action that retrieves data, okay? So let's take a look first at an action that stores data. So I'm gonna go to Zoom Connect here. So Zoom Connect integration settings. So when you store data, you can store data for different purposes. That's mislabeled. Okay, hold on, right here. Okay, so this automation is an automation we create when we install Zoom Connect or Shopify Connect in this case. And or let's just do one for Zoom Connect. It'll be easier. Okay, so let's just do Shopify Connect. It's too in this complicated. So what this does is it's going to store data for that account because we want to separate the settings from the logic. So we want to say, how does that account interpret the logic? What does it do differently? So let's take a look here. If I come here and I save locations, right? Here I'm going to save locations. And in this case, there are 3 locations, Doylestown, Philadelphia, and Chicago, okay? The key group is Shopify MindBody. The key is Shopify location mappings. And then for that key, there are 3 entries, okay? This is how we know for that site, that location, this is what the names are, okay? That is specific to that account, okay? And this is why the scope here is my account. It's not this automation, it's not linked account, and it's not tenant. And I'm going to cover each, okay? It's my account. It means it's only retrievable for this account across all the automations. Okay, so any automation can retrieve this information on this account, okay? And by the way, if I look for key group, I'm going to do that here. If I look for that key group on that account, you'll be able to see them right here. Oh, I didn't save it. So, okay. Well, maybe I'd have to execute it first. Let's execute it. Oh, that was fast. Okay, so it was key group, right? Yeah. Yep.
Isn't that the key?
Did I copy the key inside of the key group?
Isn't the key you're looking for?
Oh, the key. Oops. I said key group, but it was the key. Okay. All right, so here are those 3 locations. So you can see that the key group, the key, the value name, and then the value, okay? And in this case, because it's an integration setting, and you could do this if you have your own APIANT platform, it also is available to the client to review from, and in this particular case, this one is read-only, but in the Shopify connection integration settings, in the location settings, general settings. Oh, this, I guess we haven't turned, right. I've never turned on Shopify Connect in this account. So, but anyway. All right. So this is the account scope, which mean if I'm on another account, I would not have access to this data, right?
Right.
Okay. If, on the other hand, I had saved this, now in this case, I wouldn't want to do that, but on the other hand, if I had saved this on the linked account scopes, right? If I had chosen linked account and I saved that, well, the master would be able to read it because now the master is linked to that account, okay? And then furthermore, if I had saved this on the tenant, then even if the account is not linked, if it's on the same box or on the same tenant on that box, any other account would be able to read this data by retrieving the key for that key group, okay? If I had chosen this automation, then only this automation would be able to retrieve the data, okay? So starting over, we have this automation, means only this automation can retrieve the data. My account means any automations in my account can retrieve the data. Linked accounts, any accounts that are linked to this account can retrieve the data. And tenant is any account on the server, on the platform, not the server, but on the platform, or on the tenant of that platform can retrieve the data. And there are use cases for each one of those. So typically this automation, I use that when I know no other automation will ever need this data. So typically it's like a temp storage, like I want to say for this calculation, what is the result? The result is yes, go ahead and add that order to Shopify. It's only specific to that particular execution of that automation. Then I'll choose this automation. My account is if I want to share the data between. So this is more like when you're caching data. So let's say you had, we just did this morning, let's say you have 50 people in your staff, right? And you want to keep track of each email, phone number, first name, last name of each one of your staff, and you pull the integration or the API, because you know you're going to want to retrieve this, because sometime when you get an API payload like a webhook, you only get a staff ID. You don't get the first name and the last name in the email, right? So you might as well store them all on your account. So unless it's changed, you don't need to go back to the API. This is also how you can reduce API calls by caching data, okay? This is when you'd want to use my account. Linked accounts, you'd want to do it exactly when, in the case that I showed earlier, which is if there's that information about a class that needs to be shared across all of the connected accounts, right? You'd want to store it into linked accounts, so all of the other accounts can access the class date and time, the staff, and everything else, okay? And then tenant is most likely if you have many customers, and let's say you wanted to store usage of your integration across all your customers, and you want to be able to report back on it from one account, then you would do tenant, and then you would be able to pull this information from any account on your tenant or on your platform without having to link them, right? That's the thing. They don't need to be linked to do tenant, okay? Does it make sense, the difference between the four?
Yes. Yes. Now the linked account that's just one direction, or is that?
It's all directions.
Okay.
It's all directions. Okay. So I'm going to pause my voice a little bit. So I'm going to quiz you.
Sure.
Okay. Give me an example of when you'd want to use this automation scope.
When I don't need to store any information permanently, and it's just temporary. So in the event that it's just a one-time calculation or a one-time use of information, it only needs to be within that automation.
So almost, and I think I probably misspoke. It could be a permanent storage, but only accessible to this automation.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Right. And by the way, when you do this automation scope, the data will not be available here. It will not be visible here, right? Because this is only account scope. The data for this automation, if you chose the scope this automation, and I know you know this because you've had to deal with this, would be in here. What is it called again? Manage.
It's the
Where are we doing it?
dump stored data.
Data storage. Where do you see it? Right here. So this is the data just for this automation. It's not as pretty, but we rarely use it, but it's there if you ever need it. Okay. So, okay. Thank you. All right. So now give me an example of when you'd want to give me a tangible example that I can chew on that you would want to use a my account scope.
So if I'm going to store information that I need all of the automations to access. So let's say that it was first and last name and address that was going to be retrieved later. This way, that information can be stored right under a key group. We'll call it client information, and then a key of contact info, and then you could have address and phone number and name and first name all separated out into that, and then different automations can pull that if needed to run other
right. Perfect. Now let me throw a little curveball on it. How, if I'm gonna, in your case, if I'm gonna store information for, let's say, customer info, okay, I don't want to pull the API every time I see the customer ID,
right?
As long as it hasn't changed, right? So I could have an automation dedicated to updating it if it changes, but if I have a sale or something else and I get a customer ID, I don't want to have to go back to the API to know who the customer is, right? How would I make sure that I'm pulling the right customer? Where would I differentiate the storage in here? Is it in key group, key, or into the values? How would I know who the customer is to get the information for?
I think it would be in the key group.
No, the key group is a table, remember?
I'm sorry, I meant the key. The key is where that's going to be, because you can add to that. It could be client info underscore, an ID number, right? Which is then going to associate all of that information underneath that key to that, and then they have a relationship now between those.
Exactly. So if you wanted to do that, you wouldn't be able to just save multiple values. You would want to be able to map the part of the key that is unique, right? So in this case, you'd want to use a different one. So let's take a look. We're going to go to add an app here, and it's all under lookup. That's where in the lookup tables, this is where you can, there's a bunch of different saves, right? And get. So here, if you wanted to save, let's just say a multiple values like we had before,
right?
For a mapped key. A mapped key means you're going to make the key unique by mapping something that is unique on top of the key or just in the key, right? So look how different this looks, right? You have the key group. So you type the key group, you fetch the data. Oh, sorry. And then scope. What am I missing here?
You have to
save multiple mapped values for mapped key. Oh, that's saved, right? Let me see. Oh, right here. Sorry, I had to put a key in a key. It needed a key group, so you give it a key group, and then this is where you map the key. So here you would be able to say client ID. And then you can map the key from the trigger or from something else, right? From something else that you get it. Now, what you're saving for that client is all unique. So you have value 1, value 2, value 3, value and name, value and name, value and name, right? So this is how you make it unique. And this is essential so you don't keep on overriding the same data, right?
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah, that's why everything client ID and unique value.
Okay, so that was key. That was account. Linked account. Give me an example of when you use linked accounts.
Oh, well, it could be a similar concept, right? Because that data is collected from the a different account. So you want to make sure that you can access that. So I don't know. I think it would be very similar. It's just that it's going to be identifiable by that account's ID. I know we call it the UUID, right? So we would be able to retrieve it by the UUID using.
Yeah,
this.
but give me an example of when you'd want to store data. A tangible example in a scenario for linked accounts could retrieve it. Just any example.
I would use our existing integration. So like the Zoom accounts or the Zoom integrations where you're storing the meeting ID because you're going to need to retrieve that information back because it's one Zoom meeting to multiple locations or multiple people. So you have to know what that meeting ID is going to be across that and be able to assign that link to all those locations.
Perfect. You got it. That was it. And then tenant.
I'm not quite sure, but it would be very similar because it's basically the mothership, right? Having access to all the little baby ships.
Right. So maybe all the baby ships, they keep track of how many tasks they've had or how many bookings they've had or how many orders they've processed. And the mothership is able to go and fetch this data from every baby ships. Right. Okay, cool. Sweet. You totally got it. All right. So let's just do a couple more things and then we'll be done for the day. This is pretty dense stuff. But again, if you're a developer and you're watching this and you do integration development and so forth, you are understanding how powerful this is because this really, really allows you to build solutions for networks of, this is how we were able to do it. So what I want to do is I want to go through, just show you the different types. Okay. So you've got, again, lookup. Pen is probably like, why did I ever click attend this webinar? This is crazy. She's like, I had other things much better to do, like trim my bonsai outside of my house. Okay, so first let's talk about save. So you have save multiple map value for key, save multiple map value for map key, save multiple map value for map key to account, save multiple values to account, save value account. I'm not going to go through each one, but if I go through a couple, you'll see the variance and why you need different ones. So save multiple values to account. Watch this. So key group, we've seen this. Key, we've seen this. Multiple values, you can add as many as you want, right? On the left, you have the value name, and on the right, you have the value, okay? But this has a person UUID. This is really cool. This means that the mothership, right, or the admin on the whole platform can actually store data on an account remotely.
Oh, okay. I see. I get it.
Right. So how do you know the person UUID? You know it
right
because when you do get account URL here,
right.
this is the UUID for that account. Now we also have an action that can emit the UUID of that account, right? We have an action that can do that on the platform. But once you know the UUID, if I put some information here and I put a UUID, out of the thousands and thousands of customers I have on my platform, I can actually remotely store data on that account.
Right.
Right? I mean, that is really, really cool. Okay. Let's look at another one. And by the way, if you forget where those are, you can also say find an action. So if you say find an action here, you choose this and you say store. No, save. Sorry. Right. This is where you can see them. Save is a keyword. But I like to go to lookup, so they're all listed. So it's the lookup group, lookup tables. All right, let's look at another one. Save value. That's a simple save value. This is just one at a time. Key group, key, value name, right? And then value. And the reason those three are required is because you cannot save a value without a key group, a key, and a value name. So an example of a key group would be contact group. An example of a key would be home address, right? And an example of a value name would be street, city, state. Right. An example of value would be a value for whatever that value name is, right? So that's how you group these tables, right? So you can visualize how that is, okay? Pretty straightforward. Let's talk about data replacement. All right, I'm gonna quiz you, Mark, but let me describe it to you first. So data replacement, and you know what? The stuff that's in gray is actually really, really good. Our developers, and under the supervision of Robert, who's our CTO, does a really good job in being very precise in the description of what these things do. And it's very useful to read it. So data replacement defines how existing stored data is replaced. So if everything is equal, if I used contact and I put a key for client ID, contact ID, and then I mapped it to ID 100. So contact ID is 100, and I have email is, Joe at Microsoft.com. I'm sorry, email value name, and here I have Joe at Microsoft.com. If I store this again, right, and instead of Joe, it's Joseph next time, this is going to be a big deal because everything else matches. Those three things match exactly. It's the same ID, it's the same key group, it's the same key, it's the same value, but it's the same value name, but it's a different value. So now, are we overriding the value? What are we doing, right? So matching value name. If I say matching value name here, it means if everything is the same here and the value name is email here, I'm going to overwrite. Okay. Matching key means if it's the same key, I'm going to overwrite, and matching key group, if it's the same key group, I'm going to overwrite. But the most important one out of these that I want you to see is none. What does it do if you say none? This is why I'm going to quiz you. If the first time I see, if the first time for contact ID 100, I get an email which is Joe at APIANT.com, I'm sorry, Joe at Microsoft.com, and then the second time I run this with the same key with contact ID 100, the email is Joseph at APIANT.com. What is going to happen if I say data replacement none? Mark?
It's not going to replace it, so it's going to add another entry. So you could have duplicate data, like would it keep compounding? So if it had Joe at example.com and then Joseph at example.com, that changed back to Joe at Joe's example.com.
In this case, it doesn't replace it. It adds another entry. You're absolutely right. So what does it create? What is that called? It starts with an A and it ends with a Y.
An array.
Thank you. Penelope, cue the music.
That was amazing. So impressive.
Right? Do you know this guy knew nothing about this stuff when he started with us a year and a half ago or whenever that was? He's like an expert now.
He's a fast learner. This is not easy stuff to
it goes to show you can train anybody. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're absolutely right. So if you say none, you're basically building an array. Well, just kind of a side note, I used to be a CTO many years ago, but a lot of these concepts were so foreign to me when we started. I was like, honestly, when I started APIANT, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I'm saying it to the world now. I didn't know what a webhook was. So that's 6 years ago. I didn't even know what a webhook was. I thought I understood what it was, but I really didn't know what it was. now I realize how much I didn't know. So believe me, everybody learns. I mean, it's all a mentality. If you have a learning mentality, you will learn. So, and you definitely have that, Mark. So kudos to you. But anyway, so if you say none, it builds an array. So every time you run it, if the value is different, it'll add it to the list. Now that could be very useful, right? Let's say the key group was attendees. The key was, January 7th, Friday the 2nd, or the key group was webinar attendees, January 2nd, January 7th, 2022 webinar. Value name would be email. And then the value, you map an email. Every time you run this, for everybody who attends this webinar, it would add them to the list. It would create an array of all of the attendees for that. And then when you retrieve it, so this is where you say, this is save value. But when you say get value, and if I put in get value, the value name, January 7th webinar, what that action is going to emit is going to be an array of all the emails that were stored for that webinar.
Right.
Okay. And then you need to loop on the array, but we've talked about looping before and everything else. So, but that's how you store and retrieve an array. Make sure you say none, and then as long as the first three are the same, and if the value is different, it will add it to the list.
That makes sense. It's when you're trying to compile a list of data.
Right. And I mean, I've used this many times before. One of the cases where I used this, not that long ago, I had a pipe drive to, what was it? It was MindBody to pipe drive. And I needed to know who was an active client or a member in MindBody. And I didn't want to poll the API every time. So every day I would have a list of active and also active members, but you can also delete values from an array, right? So if I do lookup here, you'll see you have delete single value, right? So if you wanted to remove one person from that array, you could just do delete single value. The same way, as long as you match it, it'll delete it. But what I was doing is I had Pipedrive and I had MindBody, and Pipedrive does not have calculation fields. So Pipedrive does not have the ability to create a custom field that says days since they signed up, or how many days, or when is how many days until their birthday, for instance, right? It doesn't have a calculation field. Or what is the difference between, or you want to accumulate two fields. It doesn't have that. But the client, what he wanted to do, he wanted to send a really nice email to people who had a 1-year anniversary in his gym. It was a, what was it called? It was a, not a boot camp, but a
CrossFit?
CrossFit, right, in Hawaii. And on their anniversary, say, hey, you've been with us for a year, congratulations. He was actually sending them through an API actual awards with a picture, and it was all customized. It was really, really cool. But what he needed to know every morning is, have they been with us for a year? And there was no way of doing that in Pipedrive. So what we did is, every night we would store all the active clients in an array. Or I'm sorry, we would store all the active clients in an array. Every day when somebody dropped out because they weren't a member anymore, we would remove them from the array. And then every night we would go through the list of all these clients, and then we would also store their birthday, and we would compare it, is today their birthday? So, he had 500 clients, but it was not that big of a deal. It took just a few seconds to run. It would say, out of all of these, let's compare it with today. Whose birthday is it? And for everybody who was a birthday, you would branch it off, and then you would send them an API that said, here's your award, a birthday, not the actual physical birthday, but the birth date of being with. It was this your first year, your second year, third year, and so forth. And he loves it. But that's where you can kind of store your customer base in an array, and you don't have to go back to the API. You can just do some logic on it right on the APIANT platform.
Cool.
Right. All right. I think I'm going to stop here. Is there anything else we could talk about as far as scopes and storing? Any questions on? Let me see. Is there a chat here? Is there questions? Let me see. Pen, did you see any questions?
No, there's no questions.
No questions? Okay. Do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay. I thought you were going to say, when are you going to put me out of my misery and end this webinar? That's a valid question, by the way.
It's interesting to watch, and you want to listen to all levels of it. That's how you learn.
Right. And my great ambition in life is to make something very complex, to translate a very complex or seemingly complex concept to anyone. So because I really believe that when it really comes down to it, anything can be learned if you really kind of break it down, so. All right, so that's it. That's what I'm going to end today. Just to recap, we looked at linked accounts, which was cool. We looked at linked automations. Oh, and by the way, you can unlink an automation. So if I wanted to unlink this automation so it doesn't get updated every time, I can actually click here and unlink it. Okay.
What would be cool is to see on the master automation if it's linked to anything else.
That's cool. Yeah, that definitely should be added to that would be really cool. What I would love is I would be able to come here and say, show me all linked accounts, and boom, a little window would come up and tell you all the accounts that it's linked to.
Yeah.
Now, knowing Robert, if he's watching this, he's probably coding it now, and by the time we end this webinar, he'll be done. So yeah, no, that's a really good idea. So yeah, we reviewed linked accounts, linked automations. We reviewed being able to execute automations in the linked accounts from one to many. From many to one. So all of the baby ships are able to tell the mothership, here's my data, process it. Or from one to many, the mothership is telling all the baby ships, execute this automation, here's some data to execute or not. We've reviewed the ability to store data in different scopes. So do you remember what the scopes are by heart without looking at them?
My account,
this automation, go from the top down.
This automation, my account, linked accounts, tenant.
Boom. And then scenarios for each. And we reviewed storing data in different ways and being able to make the data storage unique by being able to link different parts, unique pieces of data to the key. And the key, and whenever you look at those, I always think, what is a key? Well, a key has to be a unique key to be able to open the door. So think of it that way. You see a key, just say, oh, this is the key to open this door. Only this key can open this door. So if I put a client ID at the end of this key, it's only going to be able to open the door for this client.
Right.
So think of the key as the one that's unique.
Okay. Right.
And on that note, that's all I have today.
Awesome sauce.
Okay.
Cool.
That's good.
Good job, Mark.
Good job, Mark.
Good job, Ben.
I give you an A+. All right. Thank you.
All right. See you guys.